Welcome to the Geopolitical show, The Chessboard, where we dissect extreme cases or normal cases of geopolitical phenomena all around the world so that it's easy for you to understand what's going on around you as well as globally. I'm your host, Farhan, Intisher, Khaled. The intent and purpose of this show is to bring to you unadulterated information on geopolitics through comprehensive analysis, systematic analysis, and of course, expert-validated discussions. We hope that from each and every one of our episodes, you'll be able to understand what we are discussing and why we are discussing what we are discussing. The topic for today is actually an examination of how the world is dealing with an emerging new global order, meaning a global order mired by conflicts, war, and of course, grave misunderstandings. Before we head on to the discussion, please let us watch a video on this very topic.
The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it. It has such tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. By 12 o'clock tomorrow night, where every power plant in Iran will be out of business, burning, exploding, and never to be used again. I mean, complete demolition.
Iran is a very bad regime. No discussion about that. I disagree with them on a lot of topics. But I don't believe that we will fix the situation just by bombings or by military operations.
Today, the President of the United States again resorted to language that is not only deeply irresponsible but profoundly alarming, declaring that, quote, "the whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back," unquote.
Dear viewers, thank you so much for being with us. Today I have with me in our studio Ambassador Iftekhar Ahmed Chowdhury. He is the former foreign advisor to the Caretaker government of Bangladesh between 2007 to 2009. Sir, it is a pleasure each and every time you visit our platform. How are you?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here each and every time, as you say.
Thank you so much, sir. If I were to ask you initially, I consider you to be a realist analyst. Despite having a grand, diplomatic career, like you've always been a realist when you describe or comment on geopolitical phenomena. So, from your realistic point of view, how would you define the global order?
Okay, you're right that I tend to be a realist for practical reasons. I'm supposedly a trained student of international relations, where I have my master's and PhD. But eventually, since I've had a long diplomatic career as well, I have sought to bring my theoretical knowledge to practical application. So that has effectively turned me at a bit of a realist in terms of being an observer of international events.
Of course.
If you ask me to describe the global order in realist terms, realism dates back very far, really. It goes back to the old Peloponnesian War. You have heard of the Melian dialogue,
yes, sir,
where there was this contest between Sparta and Athens.
Yes.
A group of states led by Sparta in ancient Greece and Athens around the same time. The Athenians wanted Milos was a small island,
yes,
to be on their side, to be either on their side or surrender. Yes. So they came with a delegation to negotiate with Milos. This is the famous Melian dialogue about which you must have heard. And there they uttered those famous lines that the strong will do what they can and the weak must endure what they must.
Yes.
And then they said to the Melians that this is not a realistic law that they have propounded themselves, the Athenians. This has always been in human society before the Athenians came, and it will always stay forever. So it's very interesting that they said that, because in the milieu of the world today, in many ways, despite the many attempts that we have had from time to time as history unfolded, I like to believe that there has been a tendency to eventually become realist in terms of understanding an issue and certainly in terms of its resolution.
Of course, brilliantly said, as usual, sir. And I do believe that your experiences shape you, and you evolve from having an idealist point of view to having a realist observer mindset. Sir, if I were to ask you, like we were discussing about the global order, so how much of the elements of the new world order has been realized in our contemporary geopolitical arena? Because we do hear of ideals, however, when it comes to realization, it is a completely different picture.
Okay, global orders have tended to change, shift from time to time.
Yes,
there was this physicist, philosopher called Thomas Kuhn.
Yes.
He wrote a book on scientific revolution. And his idea was scientific progress in human thinking is not a linear progression. It changes from sudden confrontation with a set of phenomena which is different from what he had observed before.
Of course.
In other words, things continue in a particular stream, and then you come across a set of factors which changes your thinking, your analysis, and your actions. So that is the thing. So also in social sciences is the same thing. You built a world order after the Second World War with the Bretton Woods institutions, United Nations, WTO, etc. And thereafter things happened. The Cold War ended. There was a rise of the United States as a single superpower. Things changed. So there was what Kuhn would have called a paradigm shift in the global order. So that is when the paradigm shift in the global order took place. Today, I like to believe that we're in the midst of another paradigm shift from that single hyperpower, which the United States has been for a long, long time. We are going into a milieu where there will be more than 2-3 state actors who will rule the roost in the global milieu.
This is something I wanted to ask you. How has big power politics evolved throughout the years in how we've witnessed, let's say, decades ago during the Cold War? Because we did see a head-to-head position between the US as well as the USSR, which is now Russia. But now, by some context and some estimation, it is the US who is considered being a monolith by some interpretation, not all of them. However, other experts believe that we are witnessing an era where multipolarity is emerging and has been realized to certain extents. Would you agree with that? Do we see a multipolar world right now? And how has big power politics evolved from, let's say, decades ago to now?
Well, for many years,
yes, sir.
America or the United States has been the single superpower.
Yes, sir.
They have in many ways inherited the mantle of the old British Empire. Some dated to the Suez era, when, as you know, Britain, France, and Israel invaded Nasser's Egypt, and Suez Crisis.
Yes.
America intervened.
Yes.
And got a withdrawal, obtained a withdrawal of Britain and France. From there on began the moment of the predominance of the Americans in the global scene. They'd already set up the institutions. And then there were sort of values that America was seen to project to the world. Values on liberal democracy, etc. And it was believed that America in many ways is the city on the shining hill, propagating all these good elements of governance to the rest of the world.
The citadel of democracy.
Citadel of democracy, etc.
Yes, sir.
Thereafter, perhaps because of manifold experiences along the way, America exhausted itself, got involved in as many of those forever wars that we talk of, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Afghan War.
Of course.
And eventually, there was a tendency to want to withdraw from the world. So this was when the first Trump era, he sort of sought to renegotiate, not withdraw from the world generally, but renegotiates America's involvement with the globe, with the rest of the world. The first, okay, the sort of the paradigms were set during that time, his first 4 years in office. Today, we, of course, see a different picture. That we see the huge conflict that America has advertently or inadvertently got into, which has shaken the roots of the global order once again. And there could be changes once this is over as well.
Of course, sir.
I refer to the conflict in Iran, with Iran, of course.
Of course, sir. And we can only hope for the best. And I have a specific question for you going into the later part of the show. But I must ask you, when I'm referring to the global West, I must also refer to Europe. And Europe, since let us assume that, not assume per se, but from the end of the Cold War, we have seen a more cohesive Europe with, in their alignment with the US when it comes to their foreign policies, as well as their involvement in global conflicts, wars, or other misgivings. If I were to say, sir, in the current context of the Iran war, the war in the Middle East, we have seen a completely different Europe. We are seeing them practicing a sense of autonomy in the sense that they're not completely aligning with the principles and objectives of the West, of the US, and in a way that has irritated President Trump, who has shown dismay and disappointment in the lax approach to the Middle Eastern crisis by members of Europe. So how do you see it? Like, is Europe actually shifting away from the policies and principles of the US administration, be it Donald Trump or other administrations? And is this evolution something that will enhance itself going forward?
Well, okay, I mean, first of all, bear in mind the relationship between Europe and America. Europe, in many ways, gave what you call the Western world many things. It gave the Renaissance, which was the love of learning for its own sake, the classics, etc.
Of course.
Then the Reformation, the challenges to fundamentalism in human faith, the birth of Protestantism, which again was at the root of innovative discoveries, etc., in sciences and all that. Then it gave the world the French Revolution. It gave the world the Westphalian system of states, etc. And the models of governance that the world was used to till that time, emperors, kings, etc. When America broke off in the 18th century, it was inspired by its own values. It wanted to delink from the old world and founded its own institutions, including these values that we talk of. Thomas Paine's Common Sense, a book written in the late 18th century, was really the Bible of free human thinking. The Federalist Papers, the Constitution of the United States itself, and they give the world a new type of governance called the presidential system of democracy. However, it was during the First Great War that when Europe actually needed America's assistance, after a little bit of dithering in some ways, America came to the rescue of the old. There was this famous French general called Lafayette, who had supported the American Revolution against the British. So when the Americans first came to Europe to support the Allies, they went to the statue and said to the statue of Lafayette in Paris and said, Lafayette, nous voilà, we are here. So in many ways, returning the compliments, and America supported the new world came to the support of the old. created the institutions that we talked of earlier in our discussion today, which created the order, first analyzed what the situation was. This analysis comes through very well in a book written by Edward Hallett Carr, called The 20 Years Crisis.
Yes.
Carr was an old British diplomat who was a professor in the University of Aberystwyth. It was then called Aberystwyth College. It's a university now. Anyway, so there was a sort of a commonality of thinking, of ideals that married America to Europe in some ways once again, which led to the order that we spoke of and the birth of these international institutions. Today, we see these differences. Remember that it's a law of physics as well as I tend to sort of think in terms of laws and certain principles that guide human conduct, which are not very different from the kind of principles that guide the conduct of nature. Law of physics is that nothing remains constant, everything is in a state of flux.
Yes, sir.
Heraclitus was supposed to have said that you never step into the same river twice. So we are not stepping into the same river twice in the sense of the relationship between Europe and America. Yes. Divergences have occurred. There are new challenges, new thoughts, new ideas. There are today's politics of the second term of President Trump is America is far less value-driven and driven in terms of what they see as America First principles,
yes,
whereas Europe is still influenced by certain essential European ideals that drive its policy, whether it's the common security interests as reflected in NATO, or the common economic interests and ideas reflected in the European Union, etc. So those differences sometimes come to relief in a broader way as the interests become diversified, as they have become diversified at this point in time because of the issues that we are confronting today, Ukraine and
Iran.
And the Middle East, Iran.
Sir, so we can say that certain principles or lack thereof is actually driving a wedge between the US as well as between the US and Europe. So when I'm referring to these specific entities, I would say we must bring into conversation the elements of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. We have heard rhetoric from President Trump that NATO is not being as participatory as the US intended it to be in the Middle Eastern crisis. And there were threats by the US that they would actually disconnect themselves from NATO so that they are better able to pursue their own goals and ambitions in regards to the global community. So where do you see NATO going forward? Because we are witnessing so many wars, so many conflicts, but at the same time, we are seeing an internal shift between the members of Europe as well as America.
Okay, yes. NATO is the result of a desire for peace,
yes,
on the part of the countries of Europe.
Yes.
Europe experienced two horrendous wars.
Yes.
The first Great War between 1914 and 1918 occurred because in the search for European colonies of the European powers,
yes,
Germany had demanded. Germany came a bit late to civilization in the way of vis-a-vis other European nations, but of course, German art, German philosophy, German music, German mathematics, German military power almost flowered in the last couple of centuries. And then they wanted what they called unseren Platz and their zone, our place in the sun. They wanted their colonies, etc., which led to the First Great War.
Yes.
As a result of the First Great War and Second Great War were linked. I talked of the 20 years crisis that E.H. Carr had talked about. So Europe underwent two wars that almost reduced much of Europe to rubble, a huge civilization.
Yes.
America came to its rescue again with the Marshall Plan, etc.
Yes.
And then they confronted what they perceived as a threat of communism. And in order what they used to say, to contain communism, this famous telegram, NATO was a result of that effort,
Yes, of
where the United States played a significant role, bore much of the costs. Now, in these America First days, obviously the American position is that Europe ought to pay more for their own protection. The Trump administration initially asked for, and still does, I think, 5% of the NATO budgetary contribution.
Yes, of course.
The contribution of the NATO countries were very little.
Yes.
Because they were able to expend the rest of the resources on their own growth and development,
Yes.
and which afforded many of the European countries to become very social democratic, etc.
Yes.
etc. The Americans perceived that to be at America's cost.
Of course, yes.
And America said
This is
that's
something
fair.
which has been explicitly mentioned by President Trump.
Hasn't been or has been.
It has been.
Yeah, yes, of course. I mean, these are things, okay, people observe, state things differently.
Yes.
What I'm telling you is observation of an observer and analyst
Yes.
from a particular perspective.
Yes.
But these have been probably observed by, say, even President Trump differently, has articulated it very differently, as he tends to articulate many
Of
things
course. Different
differently.
would be quite the word to describe it.
But the fact remains that that those were the perceptions.
Yes, of course.
And in many ways, America did feel like Gulliver.
Yes.
Gulliver, who were sort of kept constrained by the Lilliputians.
Yes.
Lilliputians, and then they wanted to break out of it. You see, nothing comes out of nothing. I mean, you see, so it has come out of something. These ex nihilo nihil fit. Nothing comes out of nothing. But so the present emotions, present sentiments have arisen
Yes.
from past experiences.
Okay, sir.
But again, you see, it's not that the relationship between NATO and America are, as any relationship, constantly evolving. Today, you may hear remarks and statements by the leaders of the UK, France, Spain, Austria, and Italy,
Yes.
which may differ from that of what you hear in Washington.
Yes, of course.
Even Canada has joined some of these European powers, and there's talk of a shift of some even military institutions
Yes.
and assets
Yes.
from America to Europe.
Yes, sir.
But everything keeps changing.
Yes.
So I suppose that once the Ukraine conflict is to a certain extent addressed successfully,
Yes.
it will take a different shape. The whole problem of Ukraine was the fact that NATO kept on expanding,
Yes.
etc., to the extent that the Russians felt that they could take it no longer.
Of course, sir. Sir, I would like to refer to diplomacy as well as the Middle East for this next question. How effective is diplomacy in the current global order in the process of reaching if not a permanent solution, but a sustainable solution to suppressing wars and conflicts and grave misunderstandings? I'm referring to what is going on in the Middle East regarding Iran, and we have seen talks occur which led to a 2-week ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran, which was in a way supported by Pakistan, and now they are actually, I think it is this Friday, they will be hosting parties from both countries. I think Vice President J.D. Vance will be in attendance, as well as Masoud Pezeshkian, the Iranian president. So how effectively is is Pakistan dealing with the situation, and will it be capable enough to ensure a peace agreement which is sustainable and practical?
Okay, I mean, this has to be addressed with very great circumspection.
Of course.
And lots of nimbleness in diplomacy.
Of course.
Well, we've had diplomacy from the beginning of times.
Of course.
Addressing issues. So there's nothing new about addressing a severe problem with such efforts as we are seeing now.
Yes.
It's the advantage of Pakistani leadership,
Yes.
both of the Prime Minister Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir,
yes.
is that they get along well with the Americans, good relations with Iran as well, and also with China.
China, yes.
So they're ideally placed in many ways,
Yes.
and so it is almost as if they had the diplomatic agility to take advantage of a situation,
Yes, sir.
which was almost made for them, as if it were. Pakistan has very top drawer diplomats who will be, I'm sure, working in the background this
course.
weekend. It is expected that they will meet in Islamabad. The role that is envisaged for Pakistan, initially it was probably just a sort of conduit of messages.
Of course.
Then they have now emerged as facilitator. And eventually, if things, through this period of 2 weeks, if things improve and the possibility occurs, they might even become mediators. Behind Pakistan, of course, there is China. You did a big power on the table for that kind of thing. And China is often chary of coming forward itself,
Yes.
you see. However, if you wish, we can talk about Chinese position on the
Of course, sir. I would love for you to address it.
But Pakistan's diplomatic wherewithal, acumen, backed by Chinese support,
Yes.
political support, gives a lot of heft to this effort.
Yes.
So let us hope something comes out of it,
course.
because there are no winners in a war, really.
Yes.
And so I'm sure this war will also bring about many changes in the Middle East. We don't know what changes,
Yes, sir.
but hopefully the changes will be in a way that the peace that hopefully comes out at the conclusion of this conflict will be something that will sustain.
Yes, thank you so much. It was a brilliant answer. And my my next question would be regarding China. What is the Chinese position when it comes to the war in Iran? Because we have seen diplomatic condemnation from the Chinese Foreign Ministry, and China has stated time and time again that it is in support of true multipolarity and diplomatic efforts in resolving global contentions. Is it actively engaging in the diplomatic process in bringing about this peace agreement, or is it something somewhat in the back channel, just pushing Pakistan and allowing it to address the grievances and the conditions between the two parties while staying in the background?
Well, I think what President Xi Jinping would wants to do, is to bring to fruition
Yes.
his idea of what they call in Mandarin Zhangguomang, which is China Dream.
Yes.
China Dream is Xi's idea of threefold development in my view. One is to create these infralinkages
Yes.
across continents through what they call the BRI.
Yes.
The
Belt and Road
Initiative. Number one. Number two, create a new kind of relationship with the principal protagonist,
Yes.
which is the United States. And thirdly, to stimulate demand for Chinese goods by
Of course.
stimulating the economy, of course, both at home and domestically. So all this combined to create what they call the China Dream.
Yes.
China Dream follows up on the revolution itself. And China has altered the primary characteristics of Marxism by adding what they call the Chinese characteristics. The thing about China is that the old philosophical positions of the Chinese thinkers were that how to reconcile contradictions. Two sides. It's almost Hegelian.
Yes.
And somehow this Hegelian, this thing got married to the 1949 revolution.
Yes.
And today, through various shifts in policies, we have this thing of Chinese socialism with Chinese characteristics. We have seen China have 15 five-year plans.
Yes.
They're on the next five-year plan. Everything is planned, projected. Slowly but surely, they're meeting targets. In this crisis itself, they are not directly involved. But as we see now in the Pakistan initiative, China has given its blessings and support. And if, fingers crossed, there is a resolution, I'm sure that China will come forward then, not with troops as such, but maybe with the capacity to pick up contracts, rebuild infrastructure, once again link these with BRI, etc.
Yes.
As you know, the same thing was done in Europe by the Marshall Plan with the Americans.
Yes, sir.
And it could be a repeat of history. In Middle East, if China plays the role that the United States played in the rebuilding of Europe. So in many ways, history not necessarily repeating itself, but re-echoing what happened before.
A very nice way to put it, sir. And as my final question to you, I ask you've been a career diplomat, and you've practiced and witnessed diplomatic endeavors to great extents and have had a tremendous career. So if I were to ask you, is global peace actually a pragmatic thing to achieve, rather a pragmatic thing to reach for in a world mired by conflicts, wars, and of course, weapons proliferation, which is something we will be discussing in detail in the next episode.
Okay. I mean, actually, my experience has not been entirely just diplomacy. It's been somewhat diverse because initially I began as a civil servant, as we would say those days, through a competitive civil service examination. I was a district region administrator, collector of revenue, administering justice, looking after district, local development, etc., and served in ministries of commerce, planning commission, etc., at home, and then moved into diplomacy. I've spent many years in the university as well as a professor in Singapore for many years.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So it's been diverse.
Yes.
The takeaway, therefore, is from all the professions I've been involved in.
Yes.
And I like to believe that, you see, every generation, it's up to every generation to create the world in its own shape. I mean, what you talk of peace and all that, there have been generations in the past who have had wars and peace in the same generation as we have had. There is nothing that is constant. You won't find a long stretch of time in history which is peaceful, and you'll not find a long stretch of time that is full with war.
Yes.
History is interspersed with peace and war, and it is the duty of every generation to make theirs something that is livable, workable, and to the benefit of those who belong to that generation.
Brilliant research, sir. Thank you so much. And you will be joining me for a different episode on a very critical topic.
Okay, I'd be happy to.
Of course, sir. Thank you so much for being with me on this discussion, and I truly am indebted to you.
Thank you.
Of course, sir. So viewers, thank you so much for being with us. This was a very eclectic discussion. We've covered many grounds, and I hope that you've enjoyed this discussion as much as I have. So, and if you did enjoy our episode, please go to our YouTube and Facebook page and subscribe and like respectively, and comment on our videos to inform us as to which discussions you'd like to see next, what type of discussions you expect from us, and of course, what type of ideas you want us to explore next. Thank you so much.